Okay, so today in InDesign we're going to talk about a first line indent, which is how you indent paragraphs. And we're also going to talk about type on paths. We'll hopefully get to layers, how to work with paths, and text wraps. So first thing first is I'm drawing a text box. And just because I don't have my text with me, I'm going to go to type and fill with placeholder text. This is just dummy text. It really doesn't say anything. Okay, if you have put your cursor before that first line of the first paragraph and hit tab, the tab stops are automatically set at every ½ inch, which is really, really wide. So put your cursor in there and delete that. If you want to see if a tab if the tab key has actually been hit, you can go to type and show hidden characters, and it'll show you with that double arrow that the tab key has actually been depressed, and that is the non-printable character for the tab key, this little double arrow. So again, that was type, show hidden characters. Right now, hide hidden characters is available because I am showing them currently. So delete that extra tab. Now, how you set a first line indent is actually pretty easy. You just need to know where to go. So up on the top is this control panel for both character formatting and paragraph formatting. You can see that this A in the upper left-hand corner is for character formatting. The P, which is just below the A, is for paragraph formatting. I'm going to click on the P when I'm dealing with paragraphs. And this is the first line indent for just this first paragraph. So I just need my cursor in this first paragraph. I don't need to click and drag or highlight anything. My cursor just has to be in there, and it can be any place in that paragraph. Now up in the control panel of this paragraph formatting controls, you will see that you have all these different options. Space after paragraph, space before paragraph, right indent, last line right indent, first line left indent. That's the one we want. So I can increase this, and in this case I'm just going to make it about as wide as an uppercase M, or what is known as 1M, EM, or an M quad. M quad, the word came from the slug of lead that an uppercase M took up. Okay, so that's enough of an indent. Some people just automatically put one pica in there, which is a little bit bigger than an M quad for this particular typeface. Okay, just so it doesn't look excessive. Now, if you wanted all of your paragraphs to have first line indents, you would select all, which is Command A or Control A, depending on if you're Mac or PC. And I could put a one pica first line indent on every paragraph of this text. So sometimes you want a first line indent, sometimes you don't. So there's the way to do it. Now, if you don't want a first line indent, there's also space after paragraph. It's right here. I'm floating my cursor over it. I can separate my paragraphs by putting additional spacing between them. And then there is no need for an indent because by space, you know where a paragraph stops and starts. So there's another way to indicate paragraph starting and stopping, is space before, or space after, excuse me, paragraph. Okay? So you don't normally do both. You don't normally do a first line indent and a space after paragraph unless your paragraphs are really long, then you can get away with it. But some of these are really short, it looks weird. Okay? So we covered not only first line indent, we covered space after paragraph. So I'm going to take this back to 0 for my space after, and we'll keep it as an indent. All right? So there's that. Now, we have a student who would like to have their type follow along a path that looks like water, okay? That kind of flows like this. Now, that's not very pretty, so let me fix that. I'm going to grab just that anchor point and smooth it out. So this is this flowing sort of path, and I drew this with the pen tool. Now, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with the pen tool, I need to do a separate demo on that because it's really crucial. Now, when you're working with the pen tool, you need to start drawing the path at the beginning point where you want your text to flow. If I started drawing from the left and to the right, my text will flow from left to right, which is not how you want it. So you notice I started drawing from right. I'm sorry, I'm speaking backwards. I don't go from right to left. I start from left and I go right. Now I'm going to copy and paste this path a few times. I'm just alt dragging. Okay? Now, What I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my Type on Path tool. It's the, if you hold down on the Type tool, it's the flyout that's underneath it. Make sure this first line is selected before I do that. And I'm just going to click on that particular path. Now all of these I want Type on the Path. So I probably should click on every single one of these with the Type on Path tool. These are now converted to paths for type. Okay, so I just clicked on every single one of them with the Type on Path tool. I'm going to go back to the first path. I'm just going to copy this text here. So I'm selecting all, which is Command A or Control A, and I'm copying Command C or Control C. I put my cursor in this first line and I paste it, Control V or Command V as in Victor. Now you'll see that it did paste that in the line, but it says, hey, there's more text here than what you have. So I'm going to switch over to the Selection tool, which is the black arrow. I click on, let me zoom in so we can see this a little bit better. I'm going to get those pages out there. There, we can see that a little bit better. I click on this and it becomes a loaded cursor. So now what I do is I link this to the next line. I click on it again, I link it to the next line, and I keep going. Okay?
Click release.
Click, release, and then come over and click again. Okay? So let me do that again. Okay, I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to hit Command Z a lot of times, okay? Let me just cover this one more time because I'm going pretty quickly. So I drew this path with the pen tool. I started from the left and ended it on the right because we read left to right. I Alt-drag the path to copy and paste it. Now, again, I grab my Type on Path tool, which is found under the Type tool, and I click on each one of those lines to convert it to a type path. Okay? These are now ready to receive type. I click back on the top one, the topmost line, since we read from top to bottom. I select all of the text. Oops. Select all of my text, or I could go to File and Place. I'm going to copy it, and I put my cursor right on this first path. I'm going to paste it. Again, Command V on a Mac, Control V on a PC. Okay, so it pastes it on that line. I grab my Selection tool, and it says, hey, there's more text here. That's what that red plus sign is. I click on it, it loads the cursor. I go to the next line and click. I go back to the end of this line, I click on the icon that represents that there's more text there. I click on it, I am not pressing on the mouse. I just click once and let off. I come over here with a loaded cursor. Again, I'm not pressing on the mouse. Then I click, and it'll go to the next line. And I keep doing that leapfrog sort of thing on each line of type. Okay? The last thing I usually will do is I will highlight these and tell it to turn the stroke to none because you don't want all this underlined. The stroke is none. And here I have type that's on multiple paths, and it reads the direction that it should read, left to right, top to bottom. Now, with this particular thing, right now I have a 1 pica first line indent. I might put that at 0, so that way they all line up to the sides. And where I do have paragraphs that are, I do want to indicate different paragraphs, I may put some space between these lines so people know that this is one paragraph, that's another, and that's another paragraph. I just click and drag and move them, or highlight them. This is contact sensitive with the black arrow tool. I just click and drag over them. Make sure you don't click on it and move it. You click over, drag over it, comes in contact with whatever, and you can either hold down Shift and arrow up or down, or you could click and move by holding the Shift key, and what that does is it keeps it more or less aligned. Okay? So that's type on multiple paths in proper reading order. Woohoo, right? Woohoo! All right. Layers. Oh my gosh, layers. Layers in Photoshop and layers in InDesign are they're similar, but they're not the same. If you've already kind of poked in around, you're like, this does not look like Photoshop, because it's not. So let's say I wanted all of this type on its own layer, not layer 1. By default, this is going to be called layer 1. If you double click on a layer, you can name it. So I'm going to call this background. So let's say I had a background color or a background image. I would create that as background. Now right now everything is on the background layer. But if I want my type on different layers, I would click on the new layer button, which is the icon next to the little trash can in the layers panel. And it creates layer 2. I'm going to double click on that. I'm going to name this wavy type. I hit OK. Now that doesn't mean that this type is on that layer. When I click and drag over this type, it tells me by this little square, which indicates that selected items are on this layer, it says it's on the background layer. And it tells me drag to move this between layers to change the order. So it's saying that these are the only things selected and they happen to be on this layer. If I click on that little square and move it up to the wavy type layer, now it is on its own layer. Okay, I click on the eyeball, you can see. Also, it changes any guidelines, or not guidelines, any bounding boxes or lines. It changes it to whatever color that layer is. This layer is red. You can see the little red right there. It's a color of selection marks on this layer. If I click on this guy, his outline, his bounding box is blue because he's on the blue layer, which is also the background. I might create another layer and call it body copy and drag that body copy to that layer. So I have body copy that's not wavy, a copy block. I have a wavy type layer, and then I have a background layer. Right now nothing's on the background. However, I might just simply draw a rectangle on this background layer, fill it with a color, go to swatches. We know that we need to go to new color swatch and get a Pantone spot color on this. And let's say I'm going to use that. Oh, no, I don't want that one. That's not very pretty.
It has to be Pantone.
It has to be Pantone. Yes, that is industry standard.
And that's just the rectangle tool.
Yeah. Rectangle tool, I use that for solid colors, gradients, that kind of thing. The one with the X in it is for graphics like photos, logos you're placing, anything you've created in Photoshop or Illustrator. I usually draw, sometimes I'll draw a rectangle and place it in the rectangle. Usually I just go to File and Place and let it draw its own rectangle. So now I have in my layers panel a background layer, which is yellow. I have a body copy block layer that's just black copy. And then I have my wavy type layer. Okay? Now when you click on the little arrow, it tells you what's in that layer. But it doesn't, like in Photoshop, it'll say it's a type layer, and it'll kind of indicate what's in that layer. It doesn't do that here. It just says there's a path. It doesn't say it's a type path. But I could turn off individual type path layers here. Okay, so it just tells me those are all the items that are in that layer. In body copy, now because it's not on a path, it does start, this layer does start with the same words as my body copy. And in background, it just tells me there's a rectangle there. Okay? So it's a little different than Photoshop, similar but different, okay?
Is it more equivalent to what it's like in Illustrator?
Yes, it's a little bit more equivalent to Illustrator layers,
So
yes.
You did that one last night.
Now, if you get your layers out of order, like you want something in front of something, like I can say, oh, send this to the back, object, arrange, send to back. Well, there's nothing else in there. Let's just choose this one. Object, arrange, send to, it must be the most background object. Object, arrange, send to back. Well, it's not sending it behind anything else other than what's in its layer. So it just sent it to the back of whatever its layer consists of. It didn't send it behind the background because those are in different layers. If you wanted the stuff behind there, you have to drag that layer beneath the background layer. Okay, so you can drag layers and move them around. But if you send something to the back, it will send it to the back of its layer, not to the whole document. All right? So there's layers. Paths. Paths are so important. I just drew some paths to deal with this type. But we're talking about maybe doing some artwork in InDesign, a little bit of vector artwork. So let's say I'm going to draw a sword like Nathaniel needed. So I'm going to use the pen tool for this. I don't use the pencil tool or the line tool because the pen tool gives me the opportunity to fill things with colors. Okay, so let's say I have a sword shape. Let me create another layer, and I'm going to call it swords, or just sword. Okay. Now, I'm going to start, I usually start at a point where things come together, like the tip of a sword. And then I'm going to draw, say, down to about there. And this is the center point. So I'm going to stop there. Now, I like to work smarter, not harder. So I'm going to copy this path and paste it, flip it, and then join the two. And it'll create one shape. Okay? So I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it in place. It's right on top of itself. I flip it. Up here in the control panel, there's flip horizontal. Now, I'm going to hit Command Z. It flipped it from this reference point, okay? You can tell it to flip it from different reference points. So I just told it, I have this topmost object selected. See, I have two of them. I told it, instead of flipping from the upper right corner or upper left corner, I want you to flip from the center right side. Okay? Flip it. I don't have to move it. It's perfect. Illustrator has this capability as well. Now, these are not joined yet. These are two separate paths. Okay? So what I do is I'm going to, let me hit the W key so you don't have to see all those grid lines. I'm going to zoom in to the very topmost part of this object. With the white arrow tool, known as the direct selection tool, I'm going to click and drag over just those anchor points. I go to Object, I go to Path, and I say Join. Bam! Done. Okay? I'm going to hit Command 0. I also need to do it down here where these two are not joined. I grab both of these anchor points. I know you can't see that there are two, but there are two there. I go to Object, Path, and I join it. Now I can color this sword the color that I want it to be. Now, if you wanted it to be two halves of color, then don't join them. I'm hitting Command Z a few times. Make sure they're not joined. There we go. If you don't join them, I could color this with a percentage of black on one side, and the other side could be a different percentage of black, giving it the impression of depth.
Nice.
The only problem with this is sometimes you have a white space in the center. So that could be problematic. But it could look like a highlight as well. If that's problematic, I will sometimes move that over just one little tick mark and it's done. It's all filled in. Now, I could also, if I want to get really fancy, go and put a gradient on this. Let me bring my gradient up, double click on it, tell it it's a gradient. And I could do a linear gradient of, say, 0 degrees. Let's see if that'll do 0. Or 90, or whatever. And now I get even more three-dimensional depth. And I'm not using Illustrator, but I'm using tools that Illustrator has. Simple drawing tools. Now for the bottom of this sword, I would use the type tool and I would create my Zayin, or my I, my letter I. I just click and drag to draw a type box here. Some programs you don't have to click and drag and do a type box. I hold down Shift and Command. On a PC this would be Shift and Control. And I'm making this really big. Let me hit Command minus so we can see it. Now I need to pick a typeface that works. This is just any old typeface. But here I have created a sword that has some depth, where I've also used the letter I, which Zayin, or Zayin, however you pronounce it, it was originally, the I was that particular character. So Zayin meaning weapon, now the letter I has become the handle to the weapon. Okay? So there's a little bit about paths. You happy? All right. Now I would group these. Object group. That way, if I wanted to copy them over and over again and rotate them and move them and make them different sizes,
Wow.
I can do that really quickly. Okay?
Wait, to do that, you just go to your layers.
What's that, sweetheart?
To do that, you just go to your layers, select all of the parts of it, and then hit group.
Yeah, you can either click on the little icon right here. Let me get rid of this sword right here. If this is the only thing on this layer, I can click on the little click to select items button and group them. So it's just Command G or Control G, depending on Mac or PC. And now I have absolute control of copying them, pasting them, rotating them, doing whatever I want to do with them. Okay? And the copy and paste is, again, Alt or Option on a Mac, but it says Alt on there too. Alt, drag, and you can put it wherever you want it. Rotating it, you just put your cursor down near a corner and the rotation icon comes up, or up at a corner. You can see there's a little rotation icon that comes up. I just start clicking and dragging to rotate. And then to resize any graphic, whether it's type or image, Shift, Command, click, and drag. Okay? That resizes it. All right, so there is a little bit about layers and paths. Now let's say I want a text to wrap around this object. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this guy for a second. Say I want a text to kind of flow along this edge right here. What I want to do is I'm going to use the wide arrow tool. Actually, I could use either tool. I can click on this object. Now, it's various objects, but I can tell it to put a text wrap on all of them all at one time. So I need to tell the computer, hey, this object is going to have a text wrap on it. So in order to do that, select the object, go to Window and Text Wrap. Window, Text Wrap. And a text wrap palette will come up. Now I just kind of poke around, like, do I wrap it around the bounding box? No, let's see, do I wrap it around the object shape? Yes. I want this to wrap around the object shape. Now let me bring up my body copy and let's see what's happening. Oh, that doesn't look good, does it? It's not wrapping around the shape at all. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the sword. What I need to do is I need to tell it, if I want it to wrap around the shape, to please detect the edges. Let's see, does it even have that? Ooh, it doesn't have that because this is a grouped item. Ooh, darn it. If this were one thing I brought from Illustrator, it would do that. So in this case, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to click on this one side and possibly, I'll have to do them separately, this side. And I say wrap around this object. Hey, my eye disappeared. Where'd it go? Oh, it's still there, but it's text wrapping. The eye is still there. Like, oh no, I have to figure that out. Don't worry, we will. I'm going to move this over. I'm like, no, it's still not detecting the edges. This is something I'm having a problem with. So I'm like, okay, gosh darn it, what's going on? Well, it's not giving me the option to detect these edges at all. And it should have. Let's see if I can get it around there. Nope. Should, but it's not. Really having a time with this. So here I'm stuck. So here's what I'll do when I'm stuck. Okay, let me show you a trick. So I'm going to take the text wrap off of all of that. My eye will hopefully come back. Oh, let's see. My letter I. There we go. This still had a text wrap on it. When I'm fighting with something, such as something I've drawn in InDesign, I will draw a separate shape and have it wrap around just this shape. Okay? So in this case, I'm having to do like a little custom wrap. So in essence, I'm faking a text wrap. Well, I'm not faking, I just have to manually do it. Okay? So I'm like, okay, I don't want text to wrap around this shape at all. And you don't care about over here because the text isn't coming over there. I'm going to turn the line off of that. It's still there. Let me show you the W key. It's still there. Let me go to Type, Hide Hidden Characters so we can get rid of some of that. I am going to text wrap this shape. I say wrap around that object. Oh, the eye keeps disappearing. Ugh. I'll show you how to fix that. But when I bring this text over here, let me hit the W key. The text wraps around the shape that I drew. But what's going on with that letter I? Well, it's text, so it's wrapping. So let me hit the W key. I'm going to click on this, the box for the letter I. Let's see which box was that. This is sword path. So it's a grouped object, and I have a text frame there. There we go. I'm selecting that text frame. You can tell text boxes to ignore the text wrap. Now this took me a while to find when I was switching to InDesign from Quark Express. But I have this object selected. The letter I is selected, you just can't see it. The bounding box is selected. So I can go to Object, text frame option and ignore the text wrap, preview it, and he's back. So this text box with this text is ignoring the text wrap. I hit OK. Now, why would you need that? Well, in case you're drawing with letters. And also, if you had a headline. Let's say I wanted the headline to come up here. His headline was what? Weapon of choice. So let's say I wanted this to go over that sword. It's not happening. That's because the sword has this, or the shape around the sword has a text wrap. And if I want this to ignore that text wrap, I click on it, I go to Object, Text Frame Option, Ignore the text wrap. And there you go. It needs to be in front of it, so I need to put that body copy above the sword because it's on the body copy layer. There we go. So now I have this running across there instead of behind it. Now you could, I suppose, have it running behind. That would work as well, as long as it's readable. Okay? So this is wrapping text around an object that I drew in InDesign. Now, if you have a text, if you have something, let me place a picture that has a clipping path on it. So I'm going to hit Command D to go get something. I'm going to go find my stuff for this class. I have an image that has a text wrap, which was the open hand. I'm going to place that image. When I bring it over here, it does not wrap around the text does not wrap around it. So this kind of image, I don't have to draw a little box around there. I can just go to Object, or I'm sorry, I need to go to Window, Text Wrap. It's already up there. I tell it to wrap around the object, but it's wrapping around the shape. Here, this option comes up that wasn't up here before for something I drew in InDesign. This is a Photoshop thing. So I can say, hey, detect the edges of that. And wrap it at least 1 pica. And you will see that the green line here is that 1 pica boundary that's wrapping around. So no matter what I do, let me hit the W key, when I move this hand, this text will wrap around it. You have to be careful about this text that jumps over. Sometimes I'll grab the white arrow tool and I'll adjust the wrap so it will move this up and crowd that type out. There we go. You don't want type jumping around like that. So this is another text wrap. Oop, it's jumping around again. It's splitting across. So I grab these anchor points and I move them up, crowd that text out. So you don't have to draw the text wrap yourself, but sometimes you do have to modify it. So that's where the white arrow tool or direct selection tool comes into play.
Is there a rule for the 1 pica?
Usually 1 pica. There's usually 1 pica padding minimum.
That's called padding.
Padding, All right. So I covered everything that I wrote on the board, and it is now time to go.
Aww.
And I will stop the recording, assuming it did record.